Welcome back to the Mentor Roulette grind. This time we're playing White Mage on a Monday evening, and this set was very different from the previous Sage set. Remember? Whoops, mostly low level stuff. There is, however, no Dawntrail duties in this set, so there's that. With that said, we start as an 11-minute replacement in the Chrysalis. Strange. My guess is that they got to the intermission and something went horribly wrong, and then someone left, because it feels like this group was perfectly capable of getting this done. So, this duty is one of the wildest weirdo fights for a trial, so let's talk about the strangest things about this fight. There are 4 things. The first one is Nabriale's double and triple spells followed by Spark. This is his tank buster, and the thing that makes this weird is that it hits 3 times with triple in succession, and without defensive cooldowns, this hits for about 3000 damage per blast on a tank. Notably, Nabriales can continue to swing for his about 500 auto attacks while these blasts are happening, meaning he can easily dish out nearly 10,000 damage with only just enough time for a healer to cast 1 heal in between. This is a huge amount of damage for a normal difficulty trial, and also quite surprising for such an early trial. The second thing is the sections where Nabriales hops to the center and sucks in orbs. The way this phase works is that you're meant to run yourself into these orbs to prevent them from reaching Nabriales. However, the green orbs give you a stacking physical vuln, and the red orbs give a stacking magical vuln. However, these 2 debuffs override each other, so if you alternate them, you take negligible damage. At times, you can also simply wait out the debuff before taking again, and other times, it can't wait, and you just have to eat the greater damage. The third thing is Blight. This happens just before the White Room intermission thing. Nabriales puts a rather heavy dot on everyone, about 1000 damage per tick it seems, for 18 seconds. That would tick 6 times in total. However, if you let yourself get immediately sucked into the White Room, the dot will last the full duration of that intermission. If instead you run away from the Void Tear, you will only be forced inside as the dot expires. Importantly, nothing relevant happens in the White Room before this specific point, so there is no downside to running away. The fourth thing is of course the White Room itself. First off, most buffs and debuffs get their durations massively inflated in this area, meaning a paladin using Hallowed Ground before going inside will have over 2 minutes of Hallowed Ground, trivializing all damage in this phase. Second, both tanks are meant to intercept meteors during this phase, and there are quite a few, so it can be hard to reach all of them. While that happens, everyone else is meant to attack the Void Tear that eventually spawns, and while not needed to defeat it in time, using Limit Break 3 for defeating said tear is optimal, especially with a melee Limit Break. This also means that it is often considered a bad idea to use Limit Break on Nabriales before this phase. Anyway, as I said, nothing major happened in this run. Very simple run in fact. But you can feel the need for a barrier healer a bit when Nabriales do those triple sparks. For duty 2, we went to Howling Eye Normal, which I've noted as a trial. Admittedly, this is one of those weird ones that appear in Leveling Roulette, is 4-man, but it looks, smells and barks like a trial, so I will note it as a trial. The only notable thing to say here, I think, is that White Mage has Cure 3, but not Medica 2 at this level. For duty 3, we went to Leviathan Extreme. This is a first in Mentor Roulette for me. However, I've previously done this fight with as little as 3 players synced. 1 tank and 2 healers, and a bunch of echo is all you need really, assuming everyone plays super well. Compared to the normal, or hard version, there are a few differences, the most notable one being no railings, so if you slip off the arena, goodbye! Second, Leviathan will sometimes disappear to instead first dash across the arena before doing the raid-wide tsunami that requires the shield. These dashes hurt a lot and slow you, so it can be hard to reach the console to activate the shield. And it can also be hard to get into position when Leviathan slams the arena, although consider that knockback immunity works for that. Third, Some of the ads can put down a circle that fears players if they run into it, causing them to run randomly, with no railings, remember? And they can also straight up just fear some players, making it crucially important to kill these ads. Hilariously, when doing this fight with a low player count, we noticed that the targeted fear in this way can be blocked with a barrier. Fourth, whichever tank is tanking the tail gets a debuff called Briny Mirror. When this tank is healed, the giver of the heal gets a stacking debuff, Briny Veil, which reduces the range of their actions. If someone collects 16 stacks of Briny Veil, they get completely pacified for a bit. I believe the intended solution to this is to make sure the healers sort of take turns healing that tank, so only one healer gets a lot of these stacks at a time. However, there are tricks to work around this problem. Spells and abilities that don't do any upfront healing don't produce these stacks, meaning a White Mage's regen wouldn't cause problems. I did not realize during this run though. And a Sage's Physis also won't cause problems. A Sage's Cardia would also not activate this effect, just like Embrace wouldn't. The main way this debuff ends up stacking high is by accidentally healing the tank with raid-wide heals, but then again, the higher your stacks, the shorter range your heals have, so the less likely you would accidentally hit the tank in the first place. Finally, at some point in the fight, Leviathan summons a bunch of blue orbs to chase players, and this can be controlled to have them all chase a tank, and they can use invulnerability to nullify the effect when the orbs explode. However, I don't quite recall if you have to kill them to detonate them, or just wait them out. In summary, this fight is one of those that can go completely off the rails, out of nowhere if a specific thing is ignored or missed, but as long as everyone stays cool-headed and focused, this is a relatively easy fight. And we beat it first try despite concerns in the group. For Duty 4, we went to the Tower of Zot. I got the impression the tank was very new, maybe, or at least not super well versed in defensive cooldown management. Similarly, the Pixelmancer had some issues dodging mechanics here and there. They might be new to the job and so had trouble planning out the mechanics, or maybe not have done this dungeon super frequently. Anyway, no deaths. Notably, while the tank had some defensive cooldown management issues, they actively chose to split up the packs before the third boss, making things a lot more manageable on my end. It probably shouldn't come as a shock that I got a lot of mileage out of careful usage of Benediction here as well. The final boss having this barrage of single target attacks from Sandaruba and Mindaruba does make it quite interesting to heal too, but once again, no deaths. For Duty 5, we went to Haukke Manor Hard, which is a weird dungeon. It was pretty funny to hear the tank ask for permission to wall pull, only for us to be met with single pull, wall, over and over and over, although later in the duty, there's massive hallways you can just keep going and going and going in. The final boss in particular is quite notorious as it has found a way to deal with power creep. If you burst the boss too hard, she will wipe you, so you have to pace yourself. The way the fight works is that at various health percentages, she summons adds, and after a while, at another health percentage, or when you get the add to 1 HP, she will consume the add and perform a raid wide, with damage presumably scaling with the HP of the add when it was consumed. The final add in this sequence is actually Lady Amandine, the final boss of Haukke Manor Normal. And the reason why this fight has this power creep issue is that Lady Amandine is summoned at the earliest when the boss hits 40% HP. But if she's busy with other things, it could take longer. However, if the boss is way past 30% HP by the time Lady Amandine spawns, the boss will skip the part where you have a chance to actually hurt Lady Amandine, which instead leads to you instantly wiping. Apparently, reading further into this fight, there is a DPS check followed by a Harden Rage in this fight. Supposedly, when the boss hits 15%, she charms all players to walk towards her, fire an AoE on one player, and then repeats this 2 more times. And then, if she's still alive, she will consume a player and then wipe the group. Now, good luck actually seeing this Harden Rage in a random group. The advice for the Lady Amandine part is to simply stop DPS when the boss hits 40% and wait for Lady Amandine. For For duty 6, we went to Bandit with a square shield, and of course, everything went just fine. At least, there were 2 classes here, so it seems like at least some part of the group really benefited from the XP. Hopefully. For duty 7, we went to the Great Gubal library. On the first boss, it seemed like the Dragoon had some minor issues. I imagine something distracted them in real life or some such, as it resolved itself a bit later. On the second boss, I always go all the way up close to the book ads, as the orbs they send chasing a player will always chase the closest player to them. And it is a lot easier if someone you know knows how to deal with them, gets them. On the final boss, I was very excited to also see everyone participate in the Void Call mechanics and try their best to work together. I find it really interesting when everyone participates in the third Void Call when the boss is close enough to death that the mechanic could probably be ignored. This is one of those cases where sometimes doing the mechanic right is more like playing the game instead of looking for loopholes, like stacking for a stack marker that barely does damage because that's what you're supposed to do. I think it is nice in a way. For duty 8, we went to Stone Vigil. Oh boy, as White Mage? Awesome! This would have been way easier for me if I was genuinely any other healer, but alright then. Additionally, it turned out Niners and Ariane knew me. Hello! With that said, Soth, the tank, seemed to both be a little bit confused, sometimes running down optional side paths, but also had some tank fundamental issues. Most of the time, they didn't properly initiate enmity on all of the mobs before moving on, often just hitting 1 or 2 with an AoE attack and running along, which of course causes a lot of trouble for me in having to keep multiple players healthy. I also got a strong impression they mainly used defensive cooldowns as panic buttons rather than using them preemptively, which often meant that I often had to do the majority of the heavy lifting on healing, often using Presence of Mind to spam heal harder. Overall, the duty went fine, aside from when Soth decided to do the mega pull after the second boss, with Presence of Mind on cooldown, and me knowing they had just used Sentinel for tank buster on the boss. I sort of knew this wasn't going to work unless they had something big. They didn't, so we wiped, and then did it in 2 pulls instead, and things went just fine. For duty 9, we went to Ramuh Extreme. How many times must we teach you this lesson, old man? Also, turns out Valexis knew me. Hello. We started this run by going over the tactics of the fight, and indeed, there is quite a bit. Then we go at it. It went really well, but something went wrong in the second phase, causing a tether to snowball out of control. For those unaware, the tether does damage each time either of the players tethered together perform actions. I think it also just does passive damage over time, but I'm not sure there. And the longer it sticks around, the more damage it does. If either of the players tethered together dies, the tether jumps to another player and continues the effect, which means that once this happens, it can quickly spiral out of control if the remaining player from the initial 2 wasn't already in the middle of collecting orbs, as this sneak attack of getting the tether instantly can easily kill one more, or even kill the one who was collecting orbs, and so it continues, quickly wiping anything that isn't possibly a tank. After the wipe, we don't discuss any changes, we just try again. This time, it goes a lot better. During phase 2, I make a point of announcing it whenever the tethers happen, and call for orbs on them if I don't see either of them move. This might seem a bit annoying, but then again, it was specifically the tether that wiped us last try. So callouts for it seemed the logical solution. Ramuh goes down in 2 tries. Very nice. Finally, for duty 10, we went to Haukke Manor normal. What a weird coincidence. In this group, it seemed the tank was very new to tanking, and not very experienced with this dungeon. They got lost a few times, but they were sort of on the right track. In the cellar, I let them know that we don't have to seek out keys, and to just stay on the main path, and then we went along. I also marked the door we actually needed to help guide them along. Perhaps they could have used some more practice with defensive cooldowns, but I think they played it reasonably safe, especially taking into account that White Mage is relatively weak at burst healing in this level range. Overall, the duty went super well. No failed duties this time, yay! And with 2 extremes on top. Based on my previous experiences with Monday evening runs and also healer runs, I'm a bit surprised with the variety, although I'm not surprised by the amount of leveling duties. I'm also very glad that we didn't have any major issues with people leaving, again, not even in the extremes. White Mage is particularly scary to run Mentor Roulettes with in my opinion, because while the job is solid overall, in low level duties it is very limited compared to the other healers, and in higher level duties, White Mage, in my opinion, is the healer that has the hardest time adjusting to an unpredictable tank. When do you start casting Holy if you don't know for sure when or where the tank will stop? How do you plan your healing if you don't know when the tank will actually use their tools? It gets quite hard. Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to support me and my channel more directly, you can become a member like these wonderful people here. You can also alternatively support me through Ko-Fi, link in the description. You can also support the channel by letting the YouTube algorithm know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the bell to get notified when next I post a video. Fun fact, Cure 3's initial potency is 550, Cure 2's initial potency is 700. Plenary Indulgence adds plus 200 potency to Cure 3, but not Cure 2, which means in the level range of 70 to 84, there's an extremely niche situation where using Cure 3 for single target healing could be a minuscule gain over Cure 2. At level 85, Enhanced Healing Magic gets Cure 3 to 600 potency and Cure 2 to 800, meaning they're at best even here.